Chapter 13 of 7 Footprints to Satan by A. Merritt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Ben Tucker. Chapter 13 In Satan's Walls. Early next morning the telephone rang, awakening me. The clerk at the desk was on the other end. There was an urgent message for me, and the bearer had instructions to wait until I had read it. I told him to send it up. It was a letter. I opened it and read. You have done well, James Kirkham. I am pleased with you. Visit your friends at the museum this afternoon. You will receive further instructions from me tomorrow. S. I phoned the desk to dismiss the messenger and to send me up breakfast and the morning papers. It was a good story, and they had spread upon it. It surprised me at first that they had given so much more space to the theft of the necklace than they had to the murders and suicide. Then I realized, inasmuch as there was no suspicion of any connection between them, that this was sound newspaper judgment. After all, the lost lives were only 3 among millions. They had been, and they were not. There were many more. But the necklace was unique. That, I reflected, was undoubtedly the way Satan felt about it. Certainly those 3 lives had seemed to him nothing like so important as had the necklace, and quite plainly the newspapers agreed with him. The 3 bodies remained in the morgue unidentified. The museum, after an all-night search, had been unable to find the necklace. That was all there was new, if new it could be called. I went downstairs and carried on the inevitable discussions of the affair with various members of the club. At 1 o'clock a messenger brought me another letter. The name on the envelope was that of the important legal firm of which the brilliant attorney was the head. In it was a check for $10,000. The accompanying note complimented me upon my report. The check, it said, was for that and further possible services. For the latter only, of course, in the nature of a retainer. Other work which I might be asked to do would be paid for commensurately. Again, Satan had spoken the truth. He did pay well. But the other work? At 3 o'clock I went to the museum. I had no difficulty in passing the barricade. In a fashion, I was a hero. The curator was unhappy but hopeful. I, when I departed, was much more unhappy than he, and, so far as the recovery of the necklace was concerned, with no hopes whatever. Obviously, I was at pains to conceal both of these states of mind from him. The day went by without further word from Satan or from any of his servitors. As the hours passed, I became more and more uneasy. Suppose that this one thing was all that he had wanted of me, that, now I had carried it out, I was to be cast aside. Hell might be his realm, but with Eve therein it was paradise to me. I did not want his gates closed against me, nor cast out could I storm them. I did not know where they were. What sleep I had that night was troubled indeed, swinging between bitter rage and a nightmarish sense of irretrievable loss. When I opened Satan's letter next morning, it was with the feeling that the angel with the flaming sword had stood aside from the barred doors of Eden and was beckoning me in. I am having a house party, and you will find congenial company. You can have your mail called for at the club daily. On second thought, I won't take no for an answer. A car will come for you at 4 o'clock. S. On the surface, nothing but a cordial, insistent invitation to have a little holiday. Actually, a command. Even had I wanted to, I would have known better than to refuse. My conscience abruptly ceased to trouble me. With a light heart, I packed a traveling bag, gave my instructions at the desk, and waited impatiently for the hour to roll around. Precisely at 4, a smart limousine stopped in front of the club. As smartly, a liveried chauffeur entered, saluted me respectfully, and in the manner of one who knew me well, took my bag and ushered me into the car. Here I had immediate proof that I had passed my novitiate and had been accepted by Satan. The curtains were up. I was to be allowed to see where I was going. We went up 5th Avenue and turned to the Queensboro Bridge. We went over it into Long Island. In about 40 minutes we had struck the entrance of the Vanderbilt Speedway. We did its 45 miles to Lake Ronkonkoma in a flat 50 minutes. We turned north toward the Sound, passed through Smithtown and out the North Shore Road. A little after 6 we swung toward the Sound again, and in a few minutes came to a narrow private road penetrating a thick growth of pine and oak. We took it. A couple of 100 yards further on we paused at a cottage where my driver gave a slip of some sort to a man who had walked out to stop us. He carried a high-powered rifle and was plainly a guard. A mile or so further on we came to another cottage and the process was repeated. The road began to skirt a strong high wall. I knew it was the one Barker had told me about, and I wondered how he had managed to evade these outer guards. At 6:30 we stopped at a pair of massive steel gates. At a signal from the chauffeur, they opened. We rolled through, and they clanged behind us. Under the high wall on each side of the road was a low, domed structure of heavy concrete. They were distinctly warlike defenses. They looked as though they might house machine guns. Several men came out of them, questioned my driver, inspected me through the windows, and waved us on. My respect for Satan was steadily mounting. 15 minutes more, and we were at the doors of the chateau. It lay, I figured, about 10 miles on the New York side of Port Jefferson, in the densely wooded section between it and Oyster Bay. It was built in a small valley, and probably little, if any, of it could be seen from the Sound, which I estimated must be about 3/4 of a mile away. So extensive were the grounds through which we had come, and so thickly wooded, that I doubt if the house could be seen even from the public roads. Considine welcomed me. I had the impression that he was curiously glad to see me. I had been shifted to new quarters, he told me, and he would stay with me if I didn't mind while I dressed for dinner. I told him that nothing would delight me more. I meant it. I liked Considine. The new quarters were fresh evidence of my promotion. There was a big bedroom, a bigger sitting room, and a bath. They were rather more than wonderfully furnished, and they had windows. I appreciated the subtlety of this assurance that I was no longer a prisoner. The efficient Thomas was awaiting me. He grinned openly at my bag. My clothes had been already laid on the bed. Considine chatted as I bathed and dressed. Satan, he said, would not be with us this night. He had ordered Considine, however, to tell me that I had fulfilled his every expectation of me. Sometime tomorrow he would have a talk with me. I would find an engaging lot of people at dinner. Afterwards there would be a bridge game which I could join or not as I pleased. We did not discuss the affair of the necklace, although Thomas must have known all about it. I wanted rather badly to ask if Eve would be at the table, but decided not to risk it. When we had reached the dining room, by 3 of the wall passages and 2 of the lifts, she was not there. We were 18, all told. My companions were all that Considine had promised, interesting, witty, entertaining. Among them, a remarkably beautiful Polish woman, an Italian count, and a Japanese baron, the 3 frequently featured in the news. Satan's webs spread wide. It was an excellent dinner among excellent company. No need to go into detail. There was no discussion of our absent host, nor of our activities. Back of my mind throughout it was a strong impatience to get to my rooms and await Barker. Did he know of my change of quarters? Could he get to me? Was Eve in the chateau? The dinner ended, and we passed into another room where were the bridge tables. There were enough partners for 4, and 2 persons left over. It gave me my chance to avoid playing. Unfortunately for my plans, it gave Considine the same opportunity. He suggested that he show me some of the wonders of the place. I could not refuse, of course. We had looked over 6 rooms and galleries before I was able decently to plead weariness. Of what I saw I will not write, it is not essential. But the rareness and beauty of their contents stirred me profoundly. Satan, so Considine told me, had an enormous suite in which he kept the treasures dearest to him. What I had seen had only been a fraction of what the chateau contained, he said. We looked in on the bridge game on our way back. Others had drifted in during our absence, and several more tables were going. At one of them, with Cobham for her partner, sat Eve. She glanced up at me as I passed and nodded indifferently. Cobham got up and shook hands with great friendliness. It was plain that all his resentment was gone. While I was acknowledging introductions, Eve leaned back humming. I recognized the air as one of the new jazzy songs. Meet me, my darling, when the clocks are chiming 12, at midnight, when the moonlight makes our heart bright. I needed no moonlight to make my own heart bright. It was a message. She had seen Barker. After a moment or 2, I pressed Considine's foot. Eve was being deliberately impolite, yawning and rifling the cards impatiently. Cobham gave her an irritated glance. "Well," she said rudely, "are we playing bridge or aren't we? I'm serving notice. 12 o'clock sees me in bed." Again I understood. She was underscoring the message. I bade them good night and turned away with Considine. Another little group came in and called to us to stay. "Not tonight," I whispered to him. "I'm jumpy. Get me out." He looked at Eve and smiled faintly. "Mr. Kirkham has work to do," he told them. "I'll be back in a few minutes." He took me to my rooms, showing me as we went how to manipulate the panels through which we passed, and the lifts. "In the event of your changing your mind," he said, "and wanting to come back." "I won't," I told him. "I'll read a while and go to bed. Truth is, Considine, I don't feel as though I could stand much of Miss Demarest tonight." "I'm going to speak to Eve," he answered. There's no reason for your being made uncomfortable." "I wish you wouldn't," I said. "I'd rather handle the situation myself." "Have it your own way," he replied, and went on to tell me that Thomas would awaken me in the morning. Satan would probably send me a message by him. If I wanted the valet, I could call him by the room phone. The phone gave me an impression of privacy that the bell had not. Thomas, I inferred, was no longer on duty as my guard. I was very glad of that. Considine bade me good night. At last I was alone. I walked to the windows. They were not barred, but they were covered with a fine steel mesh quite as efficient. I turned out all the lights but one and began to read. My watch showed 10:30. It was very still. The time went slowly. It was close to 11 when there came a hoarse whisper from the bedroom.
"Here I am, Captain, and bloody glad to see you."
Despite my absolute certainty that Barker would appear, my heart gave a great leap, and the load seemed to slip from me. I jumped into the bedroom and shook him by the shoulders. "And by God, Barker, but I'm glad to see you," I said.
"Got your message,"
he grinned, his little eyes snapping.
"Ain't no need to hide in here, though. Nobody's going to come barging in on you now, they ain't. Ace high you are with Satan, a regular one of 'em. Tasty bit of work, Captain, you done. Take it from me what knows what good work is."
He took a cigar, lighted it, and sat down, eyeing me admiringly.
"A tasty bit of work," he repeated. "And you with no training. I couldn't have done it better myself."
I bowed and pushed the decanter over to him.
"Oh, not me," he waved back. "It's all right if you're going to sleep and got a holiday, but old John Barleycorn ain't no use in our line of work, sir."
"I'm just a beginner, Harry," I said apologetically, and set the decanter down untouched. He watched me approvingly.
"When Miss Demarest told me," he resumed, "you could fair have waved me over with a feather. 'Bring him to me,' says she, 'the minute you can. If I'm sleeping or waking, it makes no difference. I want him,' she says. 'Any hour it's safe,' she says, 'but don't you let him run no risks. Ill on seeing you, she is, sir.'"
"Oh, she just let me know she'd be back in her room by 12, I said.
"All right, we'll be there,"
he nodded.
"Got any plans? To squash him, I mean."
I hesitated. The thought in my mind was too nebulous as yet even to be called an idea. Certainly too flimsy to be brought out for inspection. "No, Harry, I haven't," I answered him. "I don't know enough about the game. I've got to have a chance to look around. I know this, though. I'm going to get Miss Demarest free of Satan, or go out doing my damnedest." He cocked an eye at me, like a startled terrier. "And if that's the only way, I'll pick the time and place to make sure that I take Satan with me," I added. He hitched his chair close up to mine.
"Captain Kirkham," he said earnestly, "that's the last play to make. The very last play, sir. I'd be up for it if we could get anybody else to do it, and if nobody knew we was behind it. But there ain't nobody here who'll do for him, sir. Nobody. It's like praying for a mountain to fall on him, or the earth to swallow him, sir."
He paused for a moment.
"It's just this, Captain. If you do for him, or I do for him, we got to do for him, knowing there ain't no out for us. Not even a bloody off chance of us getting away. The Kef slaves'll see to that if nobody else did. Why, us taking their heaven from 'em? Suicide it'll be, Captain, no less. And if they suspect Miss Demarest knows anything about it, Gord, I hates to think of it. No, we got to find some other way, Captain."
"I meant only if there was no other way," I said. "And if it comes to that, I don't expect you to figure in it. I'll go it alone."
Now, Captain,"
he said, short upper lip quivering over buck teeth and face contorted as though on the edge of tears.
"You ain't got no call to talk like that, sir. I'm with you whatever you do. Hell, ain't we partners?"
"Sure we are, Harry," I answered quickly, honestly touched. "But when it comes to killing, well, I do my own. There's no reason why you should run any suicidal risk for us."
"Ow!" he snarled. "There ain't there? Oh, the hell there ain't. Maybe you think I'm having a happy holiday running round these walls like a bloody rat. A decent, God-fearing jail I wouldn't have a word to say against. But this, what is it? Just plain hell, and you and Miss Demarest like my own family. No reason ain't there. Christ, don't talk like that, Captain."
There, Harry, I didn't mean it quite that way, I said and patted his shoulder. What I mean is to leave Satan to me, and if the worst does come about, try to get Miss Demarest away.
We stand together, Captain, he answered stubbornly. If it comes to killing, I'll be in it.
He hesitated, then muttered,
But I wish to God I could be sure any honest bullet would do for him.
That touched me on the raw. It came too close to some damnably disconcerting doubts of my own. Snap out of it, Harry, I said sharply. Why, the first thing you told me was that Satan's only a man like you and me, and that a bullet or a knife would do for him. Why the change of heart?
I was bragging, he muttered. I was talking loud to keep my pecker up. He ain't exactly what you'd call human, sir, now is he? I said he wasn't the devil. I never said he wasn't a devil. And, oh God, he's so bloody huge, he ended helplessly.
Well, I'll be damned, I sneered. I thought you were hard-boiled, Harry. Satan tells you he comes from hell. Sure, where else could he come from, you tell yourself? I suppose if somebody told you the story of Little Red Riding Hood, you'd think every old woman with a shawl was a wolf. Go hide under the bed, little man. He looked at me soberly.
Hell's behind him, he said, and he's got all the passwords.
I began to get angry. One reason was that in arguing against him, I had also to argue against myself. After all, he was only voicing thoughts that I was reluctant to admit were my own. Well, I told him, if he's made you think that, he's got you licked. You're no use to me, Harry. Go back to your walls and creep. Creep around them and stay alive. Devil or no devil, I fight him. I thought to prick him. To my surprise, he showed no resentment.
And devil or no devil, so do I, he said quietly. Trying to pull my leg, ain't you, Captain? You don't have to. I told you I was with you, and I am. I'm through being a rat in the walls. That's all, Captain Kirkham.
There was a curious dignity about Barker. I felt my face grow hot. I was ashamed of myself. After all, he was showing the highest kind of courage, and surely it was better for him to spread out his fears in front of me than to let them ride him in secret. I thrust my hand out to him. I'm damned sorry, Harry, I began.
No need to be, sir, he checked me. Only there's lots about this place, and him that you don't know about yet. I do, though. Maybe there wouldn't be no harm in showing you a bit. Maybe you'd be seeing a wolf or two yourself.
What time is it? There was a hint of grimness in his voice. I grinned to myself, well pleased. There was good hard metal in the little man. It was a challenge he was throwing down to me, of course. I looked at my watch. 20 after 11, I said. So that you keep a certain appointment at midnight. Lead on, Macduff.
Your shirt, he said, will look like a lighthouse in the dark. Put on another suit.
I changed rapidly into the most unobtrusive of the wardrobe's contents.
Got a gun?
He asked. I nodded, pointing to my left armpit. I had replenished my personal arsenal, of which Considine had deprived me while at the club.
Throw it in a drawer,
he bade me surprisingly. What's the idea? I asked.
No good, he said. You might be tempted to use it, Captain.
Well, for God's sake, I said. If I was, there would be good reason.
Might just as well carry along an alarm clock, said Barker. Do you just as much good. Or arm. Mostly arm. We don't exactly want no advertising on this trip, Captain.
My respect for Harry took an abrupt upward swing. I dropped my gun into the casual mouth of a nearby vase. I unslung my armpit holster and poked it under a pillow. Get thee behind me, temptation, I said. And now what? He dipped into a pocket.
Sneakers,
said Barker, and handed me a pair of thick rubber soles. I slipped them over my shoes. He fumbled in another pocket.
Knucks.
He dropped a beautiful pair of brass knuckles in my hand. I thrust my fingers through them.
Good, said Barker. They ain't got the range of a gun, but if we have to get violent, we'll have to see it's quiet like. Get up and close, hit hard and quick.
Let's go, I said. He snapped off the lights in the outer room. He returned, moving with absolute silence, and took my hand. He led me to the bedroom wall.
Put your hand on my shoulder and step right behind me, he ordered.
I had heard no sound of a panel and could distinguish no opening in the blackness, but a panel had opened, for I walked through what a moment before had been solid wall. He halted, no doubt closing the aperture. He swung off at a right angle, I following. I had counted 50 paces before he stopped again. The corridor was a long one. He flashed a light, brief as the blink of a firefly. Before me was one of the little lifts. He pressed my arm and guided me in. The lift began to drop. He drew a faint sigh as of relief.
"There was danger along there," he whispered. "Now it will be fair clear going."
The descent of the elevator seemed very slow. When it stopped, I was sure that we must be well below the floor of the great hall, somewhere down among the foundations.
"What we're going into is one of his private ways," again he whispered. "I don't think even Considine knows it, and we won't meet Satan on it, 'cause why? I'm going to show you."
We slipped out of the lift and crossed what was apparently a 10-foot wide corridor, black as a windowless dungeon. We passed, I conjectured, through its opposite wall and along another passage of 18 short paces. Here Barker paused, listening. Then in the front of me a hairline of faint light appeared. Slowly, ever so slowly, it widened. Barker's head became silhouetted against it. Cautiously he advanced, peering out. Then he nodded reassuringly. He moved forward. We were in a dimly lighted, narrow corridor. It was hardly wide enough for 2 men to walk side by side. It was lined and paved with some polished black stone into which the light, from some hidden source, seemed to sink and drown. We were at one end of it. The floor fell in a gradual ramp for 100 yards or more, and there the way either ceased or curved. The light was so faint and the effect of the polished stone so confusing I could not tell which.
"Looks like a alley into hell, don't it?" muttered Harry. "Well, in a minute or two try to sight it ain't."
He set grimly forth down it, I at his heels. We came to a part that had perplexed me, and I saw that it was a curve, a sharp one. The curve was unlighted, its darkness relieved only by faint reflections from behind. I could not see its end. We moved on into the thickening gloom. The floor had become level. Suddenly Barker halted, his mouth close to my ear.
"Lay down. Not a sound now when you look in, on your life. Don't hardly breathe."
I looked through the crack. I felt a cold prickling along my spine and in the roots of my hair. A little below me and not more than 50 feet away sat Satan, and he was opening the gates of his black paradise to the dying souls of the Keft slaves. The meaning of the scene struck clear with my first glimpse of it. Satan was leaning forward from a massive throne of heavy black stone, cushioned in scarlet, and standing on a low, broad dais. His robes were scarlet. At his side squatted the ape-faced monstrosity of an executioner, Sunshal. At his left hand stood 2 figures with veiled faces. One of them held a deep ewer, and the other a golden goblet. At Satan's feet was a woman, rising from her knees. She was not old, fair-haired, and must once have been very beautiful. Her body, seen through the one white robe that was her only covering, was still so. Her wide eyes were fixed with a dreadful avidness upon another golden goblet in Satan's hand. Her mouth was half open, her lips drawn tight against her teeth. Her body quivered and strained as though she were about to leap upon him. The executioner whirred the loop of his cord and grinned. She shrank back. Satan lifted the goblet high. His voice rolled out, sonorous and toneless. "You woman who was Greta von Bonham, who am I?" She answered as tonelessly.
"You are Satan."
"And what am I, Satan?" she replied.
"You are my God."
I felt Barker shudder. Well, I was doing a little shivering myself. The infernal litany went on. "You shall have no God but me."
"I have no God but you, Satan."
"What is it, woman, that is your desire?" Her hands were clenched, and she drew them up to her heart. Her voice was tremulous, and so low that barely could I hear it.
"A man and a child who are dead."
"Through me they shall live again for you. Drink!" There was faint mockery in his voice, and derision in his eyes, as he handed the goblet to the woman. She clutched it in both hands and drained it. She bowed low and walked away. She passed out of the narrow range of my vision, stepping ever more firmly, face rapt, lips moving as though she talked with one unseen who walked beside her. Again I felt the cold creep down my back. In what I had beheld there had been something diabolic, something that truly savored of the Prince of the Damned. It betrayed itself in Satan's cold arrogance and pride during the blasphemous litany. It was in his face, his glittering eyes, and in the poise of his huge body. Something truly of hell that possessed him, emanated from him, hovered around him. As once before I have tried to describe it, as though he were a mechanism of flesh and blood in which a demon had housed itself. My gaze followed the woman until I could see her no more. The chamber was immense. What I could see of it through the crack must have been less than a third of it. The walls were of rose marble, without hangings or ornamentation of any kind. There were pierced openings like the mouths of deep niches over which silvery curtains fell. There was a great fountain that sent up tinkling jets of water out of a blood-red bowl. Couches of the rosy stone were scattered about. They were richly covered, and on them lay as though sleeping men and women. There must have been dozens of these, for there were a score of them within my limited vision alone. I could not see the roof. I thought that these curtained apertures might be cubicles or cells in which the slaves dwelt. A gong sounded. The curtains were plucked aside. In each of the openings stood a slave, their eyes fastened upon Satan with a horrid eagerness. I shivered. It was like an eruption of the damned. Satan beckoned. A man stepped forward toward the dais. I took him for an American, a Westerner. He was tall and lanky, and in his gait something of the rocking habit of the range rider. His face was the hawk-like type that the mountain country breeds, and curiously it made the peculiar pallor and dilated eyes mask-like and grotesque. His mouth was thin and bitter. Like the woman, he prostrated himself before Satan. The veiled figure with the goblet held it out to the ewer-bearer, who poured into it a green liquid. The cup-bearer handed the goblet to Satan. "Rise!" he commanded. The supplicant sprang to his feet, burning gaze upon the cup. The unholy ritual began again. "You, man who was Robert Taylor, who am I?" "You are Satan." "And what am I, Satan?" Again the blasphemous avowal. "You are my God." "You shall have no God but me." "I have no God but you, Satan." "What is it, man, that is your desire?" The slave straightened. His voice lost its lifelessness. His face grew cruel, as that of the executioner's own. "To kill the man I hate. To find him. To ruin him. To kill him slowly in many ways." "As you killed him once too swiftly," said Satan maliciously, and then again tonelessly. "Through me you shall find him whom you hate, and slay him as you desire. Drink." He drank and passed. Twice more I heard the clang of the summoning gong, and twice I watched the white faces of these doomed ones with their avid eyes appear through the silver curtains and disappear behind them. I heard one man ask for dominance over a kingdom of beasts, another for a paradise of women, and Satan promised and gave them the green draught, the keft. The subtle, devilish drug that gave to its drinkers the illusion of fulfilled desire, that turned the mind upon itself, to eat itself, and that by some hellish alchemy dissolved the very soul. I stared on, fascinated, Eve forgotten. But if I had forgotten, Barker had not. The crack through which I was looking closed. He touched me, and we arose. Soundlessly, we slipped up the ramp through the dim black passage. I felt a bit sick. It had been no nice picture, that of Satan wallowing in the worship of those slaves of his, dealing them out love and hate, dark power and lust, sardonically and impartially giving each what he or she most desired. Illusions, yes, but more real than life to the drinkers when the drug had them. But God, their awakening, and after that awakening, the burning craving to escape reality, to return to that place of illusion to which the keft was the only key. No wonder that the three of the museum affair had gone to their deaths with such blind obedience. And if Satan was not what he pretended, very surely he was not disgracing that power whose name he had taken. I had paid little attention to where we were going, blindly following Barker's lead. "Well," he whispered suddenly, "was I right? Wasn't it a alien to hell? What price Satan now, Captain?" I came back to myself with nerves jumping. "A drug dealer," I answered him. "A dope den a la Ritz, that's all. I have seen opium joints in China that would make it look like a trench dugout. And the pipe hitters there would cut your throat for a pill just as quick as these would for Satan." Neither of which assertions was at all true, but it gave me comfort to say them.
Yes, he said cynically. Well, it's a good way to think. I hopes you keep on thinking that way, Captain.
I hoped that I might begin to think so.
Soft along here,
he whispered. We were moving like ghosts in the darkness of a passage. I had an indistinct memory of having entered several lifts. Of even the probable location of my room, I had not the slightest idea.
Here we are,
he muttered, and stood for an instant listening. I thrust my hand into the pocket where I'd slipped my wristwatch, that its illuminated dial might not betray us. I took a swift look. It was almost midnight. Barker drew me forward. There was a faint scent in the air, a delicate fragrance. Eve's. We were in her room. End of chapter 13.